Turnbull, welcome to Capitol Hill. You've had this report into the failures of the NBN policy. Is the important thing, though, what you learn from it and what you change?
Well, it is very important that we learn from the mistakes of the past. And what Bill Scales has done is, in his report, set out a very succinct and readable account of the debacle, frankly.
So how do you avoid it in the future? Do you do what he suggests, have cost-benefit analysis, a proper process for projects over $1 billion for infrastructure, which is actually higher than the Coalition's commitment is to, but also have a way for people involved in the process and people outside the process, not only for infrastructure, but for broader reform to understand it?
Definitely. That's exactly what you have to do, is do your homework. You've got to do a proper cost-benefit analysis. You've got to make sure that you've got the right expert advice, that you're undertaking projects, whether they're $100 million or $10 billion or $100 billion, you've got to go about them in a business-like fashion. And what Scales described was a chaotic process that appears to be without precedent. It was so bad. I mean, there have been plenty of poor decisions taken by governments over the years, but there's never been anything where so much money has been wasted so recklessly.
He also, though, mentioned not only infrastructure projects but other economic reforms. Should these processes apply to major economic reforms as well? Well,
his recommendations relate to infrastructure projects, but I think, yes, all government policies should be properly analysed and costed, and they are. I mean, that is the normal process. It's certainly the process with our government.
Do you think the public needs to better understand? You need to, in effect, sell these policies better to the public before you start them?
I think, well, it's not a question. The word sell is often used a little bit. Yeah, explain. I prefer explain. I think you've got to explain what the problem is, why there is a need for a policy, and then once people understand there's a problem, then you've got to offer your solution and hopefully successfully persuade people that that's the right solution. But, the problem with the Labor Party's approach to NBN was that it was just so damaging. We could have had ubiquitous broadband years ago.
It's been almost 11 months since the last election, 8 months since you announced it. Where is the cost-benefit analysis into your NBN?
It will be released very shortly. The Vertigan panel has almost completed its report. It's literally, I expect to be getting a copy of the report within a week or so. The aim was to have the report finished by the 30th of June, but as is often the case, they've asked for a bit more time. And it's a complex study because it also involves a regulatory review. They've produced one report also on regulation that came out around 30 June, and the rest of their work, including the cost-benefit analysis, is very close.
If we could look at the data retention policy, in the Alfred Deakin lecture you gave 2 years ago, you said it was a sweeping and intrusive new power, it would have a chilling effect on free speech, and there were formidable practical objections. When it was raised in the party room 2 years ago, a dozen MPs warned against it. Why would the coalition government of which you're a part introduce it?
Well, you're assuming we are pursuing it, Lyndal, and I can't comment on the speculation in the press. Obviously, we are committed to freedom. We're committed to ensuring that the state's intrusion into the private sphere of every citizen is limited to no more than what is absolutely necessary, in this case, in the interest of national security. So those matters are being weighed up and decisions will be taken. But I can't foreshadow those.
Can you, though, see a way around the practical problems you raised, particularly the problem you raised in your lecture of Google, which is an international company which could be asked to treat Australian customers differently if the data retention policy was taken up?
There are formidable problems associated with technical problems. Let me perhaps say, I'm not being unhelpful, let me just scope out a little bit of the challenge. In days gone by, telephone companies kept detailed records for billing purposes of who you called and how long you were on the phone for. And mobile phone companies obviously keep those records for billing purposes. And they have always been accessible because they're business records, and that's true whether it's here or in the United States or elsewhere. What the internet and telecommunications have become much more complex. There's a lot more data out there, but there is less and less of it actually in the hands of the telcos. This is an important point to bear in mind. So it's a very complex issue. There are big issues, there are technical questions, there are issues of privacy and security. No one said government was easy, and this is just another one of those difficult exercises that we've got to deal with.